Let's call the meeting of the Infrastructure and Property Committee to order at 6 o'clock. The first order of business is the election of a chair for the committee. Could I have a...
I nominate Ed Rankin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay.
Okay, roll call. Mark Eastman.
Here.
Ed Rankin, here. That's it.
Yep.
Road project discussion. Going to give the floor to Jay.
I'll introduce it only in that the referendum that was adopted in November for up to $3 million in road repair, and I want to add that everything that's on these was provided to the people at the polls, and as part of this, that this was what we told people we were going to do, and over a 3-year period. And I asked Jay to break that into pieces as to what would come first, second, or third, which he's done. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that petroleum prices are at an all-time low, and so are borrowing costs. Well, the amount to borrow right now is as low as it can get because of the current situation. And it sounds like taking advantage of a bad situation, but it could be financially in the town's favor to do that, because the chances are that you would not have to spend $3 million to do what it was identified as road projects, because the cost of petroleum is so low right now. So anyway, Jay can explain why he broke things up the way he did and answer any questions.
Before you start, can I just get a quick, what you mean by surface, mill and fill, and RGP?
Mill and fill is what you would do in a situation in a downtown street that has curbs on each side, where you would grind it down, say 2 inches, and then fill it back up to the same height. Because if you keep overlaying in a street that has curbs, then it builds up over time, and then the curb's ineffective. So that's what they call a mill and fill. You mill it down, fill it back up to the right height.
Okay.
The RGP is what is a reclaim, grade, and pave, which is you reclaim or you grind. It's almost like a huge rototiller to all the pavement and the gravel that's existing, blend it all together, grade that out and compact that, and then put new pavement on top of that.
So surface is just surface.
And surface is just what you see, regular overlaying, put an inch pavement or so on, just
okay.
Overlayment. But my thought was that if we attacked the all of the surface projects in year one, it's the biggest number, but it's going to be the biggest effect. So the people that voted for it are going to see almost, I say every, but a lot of roads in town are going to have all new pavement on it, and this year they'll be like, that's what I voted for.
And
so,
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
This would, it's going to be goes bang for the buck because of the low oil prices, taking this on first as well?
Yeah, because that's where the big dollars are going to come from, is from all those miles. It's almost like 19.5 miles of pavement of the overlay.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've only been doing 3.5 miles in our maintenance every year.
Right.
So it's going to be a significant change. People are going to see a lot of roads be done in a short amount of time. So that was my thought with that. And then all of this happened with the price of oil. So I expect pavement prices to be much more competitive than they have in the last several years. So, and the moving forward from that year one, I thought that we could break the to reclaim, grade, and pave, which is the old gas pipeline project, which is basically from Route 15 all the way in Millvale to the Four Corners, the Silver Lake intersection,
Yep.
and then the Silver Lake intersection all the way down pretty near to the lake. Where the power line crosses is where the pipeline turns and heads towards the mill.
Yep.
And that, where all of that has happened is where we're seeing the most significant movement in the road because of the differences in the base because of how they dug it out and backfilled it. And we've done it in a section, I'm trying to think of which piece it was. It was a short piece on Millvale that we did that was, the road was collapsing. It was only, I want to think it might have been out by Harry Woodman's or something out in there on the top of the hill. And that has actually been holding pretty well when we did that. So that's what made me think that that would be a good option to do for that. Because it's pretty cheap considering what the cost of excavation, all new gravel,
Yeah.
all new pavement. I mean, it's almost pennies on the dollar compared to full construction. So,
Now, we can't lock in these prices for 3 years, or can we?
I don't think anybody would be willing to do
Right.
that, as far as pavement price.
I wouldn't at $30 a barrel
Right,
either.
right. But,
So when you base these prices, did you base them on last summer's prices? Or?
Right, I did. I based them on last year's budget price, which was like $1. My budget number was like $1 more per ton than what we actually got for a bid last year. The year before was 50 cents per ton. So,
So my question on top of that is, one of the biggest complaints I hear, especially on these roads that I'm looking at in year one, are lines. You know, whether it's white lines on the outside or yellow lines down the middle. Is that included in this project at all, or?
no, the town doesn't have a striping
I understand that,
practice or
but we,
policy. I didn't figure it into the price.
no, and I'm throwing that out there, that I don't know if anybody else, but that is one of the biggest complaints that I hear, especially,
I do, I get the same thing.
you know, if we're putting brand-new black pavement out, that's going to be blacker than what it is now, and, you know, especially where we're putting it out back.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we ought to at least explore on some of these places.
And it's something I can look into it. I did have an estimate one time, a couple of years ago, for, I think it was the senior
Resource Group had asked about the ideas, and I indicated that we couldn't really pick and choose where because of one corner and one place.
Right.
You know, that if we were going to do it, we had to look at, I want to say it was between $50,000 and $60,000 to do striping on all of our
of that
Out-
road.
outlying roads.
To me,
Isn't
that's
That's
a,
just a center line.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's just a center line, you said,
I
not
think.
outside?
No, that wouldn't include the edges, that would just be the.
Didn't I read somewhere that the state regulates where you can actually put those lines and where they?
I think, yes, and you would have to get them involved as far as if it's a double line or a
Passing lane.
passing lane.
Right.
Yeah.
So there might be.
But I
costs
think,
involved
I think
in
the
studying.
I think the center line is really the only one you'd be able to get, because it has to come from the right-of-way to the center of the road,
Mhm.
which some of these roads, the center may be off a little bit more. You don't have, I don't believe we have enough room to put the outside lines in.
That is true, because past practice with our paving, we only paved 10-foot wide lanes.
Right.
And then you take that stripe, or double stripe, you put that in the center, you lose about a foot.
Right.
People are staying off of it,
Right.
which is gonna make it harder to, I mean,
If it's something,
down that
if
road,
it's something we could explore, maybe just to, I would like to explore it, just to,
I can see if I can get some.
one, we could have an answer for somebody if they understand why we can't do it.
And if we've got a surplus, we could look at
Yeah.
getting it done.
Yeah, right.
And understand you would need to build that in to an annual or biannual
Right,
yes.
budget,
Right,
because that, even if your pavement isn't gone, those.
The lines disappear.
The lines
How long do they
disappear.
usually stay?
Yeah,
They stripe, the state does twice a year in places, at least annually, but twice
We
a
do
year.
once a
Some
year
of
for
the
all our
high-traffic
parking lots
roads
and all of our
Depending on
downtown.
where traffic is and stuff.
Once a year.
How it
It's
lasts.
an annual thing, so it would be
50, 60
something-
every year.
If you start down that road, we gotta stick.
And that's why I think people need to understand that it's not, I put a white stripe down the middle and we're done with it.
Right.
Right, because a white stripe does not even do that.
Right. Well, a yellow stripe, but I'm just saying, even a one stripe,
Yeah.
I think if people understood what the rules were, when and when you can't do it, the maintenance that goes with it.
Yeah, we have the cost to explain.
yeah, and the expressed concern at the outlet, at the outset was that you can't see where the edge of the road is. That was a concern that was brought here, is that at night,
Yeah.
you don't even know whether you're on the road or not.
Always coming.
They wanted the outside
And
lines.
it was more of an issue, I think, before we were.
We had our
catching up
machine.
with filling those shoulders
Right.
back in. I mean, it's not so dangerous necessarily falling off a lip of the road
Right.
if we chase that around
Do you-
and make sure that.
Do you think with these projects, Jay, that you would be able to do the shoulders, or is that included with?
We're thinking we're.
You'd be able to get on.
we're gonna do it. It's
I know
pretty
sometimes it's
ambitious ambitious to to do. do. 19 miles of road, but it's going to be as soon as the paving starts, that's what we're going to do the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So
Pretty much.
If you can, and we've got 8 or 10 roads here, and obviously some of these aren't the whole road.
Right.
If you could just go, like Russell Hill Road, is that from Bucks Mills, or is that from 46 going up, or is that sort of in between?
The plan was to do the second half of Russell Hill, so that would
Got
be
down
Bucks
there.
Mills down to the.
Down to the gravel pit
The
almost.
cemetery
Yeah,
area
yeah.
on Russell Hill.
Okay.
Cemetery,
Yeah, cemetery.
How close will all of this put us to the standards that the state sets for roads when we get all this done? How close are we going to be? Or what percentage of our roads? I remember Neto stood up here and he said that after they got done that year, there would still be 60% of the roads that weren't up to the standards of the state. So we're going to be closer than that, aren't we?
We should be far closer than that. Not to mention, on top of this project, the 19 and a half miles, we have maintenance on top of that, which is in the budget this year, which tax potentially 5 miles of road
So that'll be above and beyond.
on top of this. So that puts us up to 20-something miles of road. We only have 33, I think, of back roads, meaning out of the compact area.
Right.
30-something, 33, and we have around 10 or 13 downtown streets versus roads. So, yeah, you take 24, 25 miles of pavement, you're going to have a lot of them. Brand new stuff. And then if we continue down that 5 miles a year, you figure 50 miles about roads we have altogether. If we do 5 a year, that keeps us on about a 5-year cycle on all the roads. Now, it's not all the roads wear as fast as others, so
No.
some won't need it as early, but like these outback roads, they see more heavier trucks and traffic and stuff, so they
Yeah, I understand that the salt will have a tendency to work on these cracks that we see.
Yeah.
What originates the cracks? Is there anything we can do to kind of curb that from happening, kind of get those cracks taken care of before they get salt into them and they start opening up?
I don't know of a trick necessarily. It's the frost. The frost that moves the road causes it to just a little fracture, and then it's, another year, and it turns into a bigger one. And
Yeah.
I've tried several times to schedule the frost. No
Yeah.
frost, didn't work out. So, but that's what it is. If we didn't have to deal with the frost, our roads and the money we spend would be far better condition. It's just,
Yeah,
we can't
no doubt.
stop them from moving in the wintertime.
Yeah.
But the roads that we've treated with heavier,
Yes, the roads we paved the last 2 years, they've survived the winter much better because they don't have the cracks yet. So, I mean, they're flattened right back out almost now compared to the ones that are in the worst shape because they have.
we used to do a thinner overlay
Yes.
than we do now. And that thinner overlay is more susceptible to quicker
Yes.
cracking. You can go a little farther because you didn't put as much on the, but you have to go back more often.
Yeah, and at times previously when we paved, I mean, we were held to such a close number that if the road had much of a crown to it, there was times that the pavers were almost dragging the new stuff off in the center at the high point, and so you were barely getting a cover, you know. So this past year, I pushed them up to the worst roads that we paved. I'm like, I need them shimmed so they're flat, and then I want my inch of pavement on top of that. And it seemed to work much better as far as holding for the winter.
I have a question for Sue. Obviously, this is borrowed money. We haven't borrowed it yet.
No.
So we are going to benefit from the lower interest rate when we borrow this money compared to what the folks have voted on, correct?
Yes, we,
That needs to be understood, too, that this is actually a cheaper.
well,
Those rates dropped.
especially in this first year
Yeah.
with all the paving. if-
So we're not going to borrow the whole $3 million at that percentage rate. We're going to borrow as we need it.
That would be my preference, because the
This
total
number.
cost of the project won't be known until the third. Well, you'd put it out to bid, a
Right.
three-year project, and they would give you something with an escalator in the paving piece, is generally what happens. If you give them 3 years and they say the total contract is X, but there's a paving, a thing that if the price of paving changes more than that price changes, it's the same thing we have in our paving contracts that we get every year, but the idea of doing the biggest amount of the paving in the first year, in this year where we know that petroleum prices are low, is that it should impact what's left after this is much lower in terms of paving. The impact of a paving price change wouldn't be as great on it in the second or third years. But we could borrow as we need to pay for it. We would get a loan with the bank that is a draw.
Almost like a line of credit type
Yeah.
of thing.
That's a draw, so that you don't have to take it all at once, but you can get a static interest rate.
That's what I was wondering. Can we get that?
That's low.
Okay.
So you only pay interest on the amount you take?
You only pay
Yep.
interest on what you
Right.
use when you
Right.
borrow it,
Yep.
rather than the fact that you...
And that's handy, because then you don't have to redo the loan. You can just draw the monies as you need it. Saves a lot of
For something that,
time.
like this, it would save the town the most money not to be borrowing it all and then not having expended it until, and with the goal of the fact that this is what we've identified as projects, and the goal is not to have this cost $3 million. The goal is that if we're in a very advantageous paving situation, that we can get that significantly less than $3 million and do what we identified to the residents that we were going to do.
Jay, do you have a map showing where these half-mile, 3.5 mile, whatever, where they are on these particular roads?
I don't have one prepared, but I could come up with one.
That's what I guess. That's what I'd like to know. Just which parts of which
Yep,
roads are.
I could do that for you. I don't have one.
Great, it'd be great if you could get that out. Thanks.
That's what I was trying to ask. Thanks, Jim, because I couldn't get it out.
So what we're looking
Print it out.
for is the committee's approval to put this out for bid, no, understanding that the council has to approve whatever it is, but this is the a proposal to carry out what was approved by the voters, and if we're going to take advantage of anything, we need to get bids out sooner rather than later to get in front of the council to make a decision on
Motion to
how to
send it
do
out to bid.
Because I think that,
Ed,
like I
Ed,
said,
a
this
couple
is the
questions.
big number. Go with all this
Questions
overlay
about
year
this.
one, that's the big number, and if we'll get the most advantage out of that.
Yeah, I would agree.
And, I mean, there are gonna be other costs, you know, I have some gravel costs and stuff, but all of the gravel and any culverts and stuff that might need to be done, I'm still only figuring about another $50,000.
Well, that doesn't fluctuate as, like, oil
Right,
does.
that shouldn't, but I'm gonna need to get some prices on gravel. Historically, I've been getting the best price and the best product from Wardmills here in town, but obviously we price around and give people a chance, but, I mean, I'm gonna be buying like $40,000, $50,000 worth of gravel, so people might be a little more competitive
Sure.
than when I only want a couple hundred yards, you know, at a time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Bruce?
Yeah. You're gonna hot top all those roads you've got listed. Is there any way we can fix the underlayment on the road? We hot top Russell Hill last fall. It's cracked all already. So, hot top the other end, the whole road's gonna be needing hot top in 3 years. At the rate it's going. There's problems, and a lot of the roads have got problems, because the same old potholes, the same old areas break up every year. The underneath is the problem.
It can be done, it can be done.
No, this price
quickly.
tag.
I understand everybody wants good roads, I'm not against that. It's just, to see a road hot top last fall, 6 months later it's cracking and falling all apart. The edges are breaking off. What did you accomplish?
Well, it was safer for a short amount of time, this is what we got out of that. Like I said, I can't control the frost, actually.
Yeah, but there's other roads that got frost in the area that don't break up like that. I mean, I understand this frost, but all these parking lots, they get paved, they go 10 years, they got the same frost.
They don't have the weight of the vehicles on the
All
road.
right, it is.
Yeah,
It's a
Hannaford's
heavily
got the same
trucked
size trucks going on their road, in their yards and stuff, I mean. The mill, when it was going, they had trucks going all day long, and their driveway didn't break up. So it's the base, it's gone.
But then we're back to a whole different discussion if we're gonna tear up every road, aren't
I
we?
let it.
Yeah.
I understand, but maybe you can do 5 miles and fix it, and then hot top the rest or something, so that you're stepping in, that further on down the road, you can go 10 miles, 10 years without having to do it.
We can try to develop a schedule.
That's all
for
I'm
that,
asking.
for
I mean,
removing it.
it just seems such a waste to go out and paint it black, and have it broke up the next year, and go paint it black 2 years later, and the roads look like they do every spring.
Jay, this year 3, that 3.1 miles, that's what you're saying, tearing up that entire road, right? On year 3, that 3.1 miles for 391?
Yeah, that's the
That's approximately what we'd be
the
looking at
grind, yeah.
to do something.
Yeah. I mean, that's not excavate and new gravel, that's grind the old pavement and the gravel together to make a new base.
Yeah.
And you said what, that's a foot?
It's a foot, sometimes more than that they can get,
Yeah.
depending on the shape of the road or, no, but it's at least a foot of material that gets blended. Yep.
And it just, as we always called it a turtle when I worked at the city of Brewer, as it goes through, it just leaves that and you just
Yeah.
pack it
It
after it goes
basically,
through.
it goes down and grabs the gravel below
Yeah,
and breaks, and just pulverizes it all back up to a, consistent material. And we grade that to where we need it to be and compact that, like you do if you were putting gravel back in.
Mhm.
And it packs in, we find, harder than just putting regular gravel in its place. I mean, because, you know, like when you
Yeah,
use
it's-
millings and stuff,
right.
it really packs in
Yeah,
hard.
it's got some glue to it.
Yeah. Plus, that seems more flexible than other
What,
options.
what's the weight requirement to packing that back down, or is it just pack it till you're satisfied, or is there a certain
Well,
amount that has
there
to
are
be
tests
done?
that you can do for percent compaction, that they have like I want to think it's nuclear or something that they use. It's some sort of a sounding rig that they can tell the action of the test.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that will be on the site when this is done?
It should be, yeah.
Okay.
Bruce?
Yeah. Isn't there a building code, if you build a private road, you want the town to take it over? I believe there is.
In the subdivision ordinance, there's rules on.
That gives you an idea of what the gravel base ought to be.
Even if you talk to the state though, there's built roads and then there's roads. And built roads like Route 15, we all remember how long it took them to do from the way station to Snow Corner. That was like 2.5 years, and I don't even know how many workers. I mean, and now it's a built road. So now it doesn't crack and break like it used to, but it takes a ton of money to do that. You look at like Barber Road next to me on Jacob up there, that was built to specs in order to be taken over by the town. That road's bad, real bad. So, I mean, it just happens.
That gives you a guideline.
The roads that you see, like the state roads that you don't see the heave action so much, they're probably 2 times plus the amount of base under them that secondary roads have as a standard. And I mean, you know, you drive on the interstate, you're driving on 4 or 5 feet of material versus a 1.5 to 2 feet of material on a secondary road. And you can't hold them to the same standard because their costs are hugely different to do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how, somehow, there's clay there. You can see it pushing the hot top.
Yeah, I mean,
Grinding that, you're still gonna have clay there.
some of them were cart paths, that were just paved.
State project down on 46, it didn't work. 3 weeks after they put the hot top down, they walked out into the ditch. As a taxpayer, it's awful frustrating to see stuff like that.
Any other questions?
Just on your year 2, and I'm just adding numbers up, trying to get my head around it. Franklin Street's 0.3 of a mile for 30,000. Broadway's basically twice as much, 3 times as much of the cost.
Broadway is, if you measure across it, is, I want to think it's like 30 feet of width in pavement versus 20 feet of width.
Thank you.
So it's considerably more pavement.
Don?
It's a very small point, because I realize you're talking about miles of roads. While doing those miles of roads, the short stretch into the recycling yard is repaired once and for all. It would make a big difference, because a very large percentage of the population uses that road and it's tearing up cars.
You mean at the transfer station?
Yeah, the second area is the entrance to the parking lot, they're going to build off Main Street. The first 5 feet of that from Main Street in, looks like the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And lastly, right here, this parking lot, I don't know when it was last sealed, but it's breaking apart all over the place. Another year or 2 without that being sealed, they're going to need a new parking lot. That's small compared to the bigger issue. I wonder if any of those can be.
It'd be easier, it's gonna be easier to filter that into our maintenance projects when we're not spending it so
And
fast.
also, remind me, that's what they voted for, when they voted for payment.
Mhm.
I'll notice it immediately.
Yep.
we have bus turnarounds, and I know this has been brought up before. How many do we have?
Oh, wow. Didn't I give you a list one time? I want to think it was up near 20 of them, something.
You mean the dead ends that don't have,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of them.
and most of them are not acceptable. Like,
So
they're
what
not
are
built
your-
big enough, or they're not built correctly.
So what do the buses do if they're not, they don't turn around there, or?
They do, or they back into a driveway that's close to that, yeah.
The town has, and I want to say it's 34, now that I remember
That
it.
could be correct, yes.
Different dead ends that don't have a turnaround that,
For a plow or a school
or
bus. Yeah,
anything that allows, the plow trucks, our trucks have to back up and turn around or pull into somebody's driveway. We've had, I asked Jay for a list, and 34 might not be the right number, but it's a big number
it's a big
of
number.
of roads that to just tee into nothing without any provision made when that road was either built or accepted or whatever to allow any.
And the town doesn't necessarily own a right-of-way big enough at the end of these that we
To
could
put
just
one
go in
in.
and build an adequate turnaround. Like, there's easements or deeds that have to be dealt with, and it's not a quick fix.
But we have looked at it. I did ask him for a list of those just because of the concern that every time we put one of those plow trucks with its great big wing and its great big everything turning around in somebody's driveway, we stand the risk of running over somebody's child or dog or...
Or mailbox.
I'm not being...
You know, something,
Or political sign.
yeah.
Oh, political
Or
sign.
political sign.
Well, I was, the priority-wise, the child and the dog are up there, but because of my concerns over the town's liability for that, which apparently has been the way it's been for years, but we're looking at the ones that we have sufficient right-of-ways at the end in order to do something about that problem. So yes, it's an issue, and we have been looking at that.
If at least they could have some of them that they turn around, at least if you could fix them from the winter, put in some dirt or something. I'm getting
Yep.
some calls on that. That was the question. Thank you.
You got a motion, then.
Any other questions, comments? I'll second your motion, Mark, just under the understanding that the council will have a full discussion of everybody involved.
In order to better understand what you need a bid in front of you to understand the
Yes.
financial.
Right, we're not sure what the numbers will be, but we're just expecting they should be favorable.
Yeah, with borrowing rates right now and oil prices, that should drive that, especially that first year of work, down considerably, and that the goal is to do work identified, but come in well under $3 million. That if we can do the work that was identified for considerably less, then saves everybody money and gets that done too. So.
And just to clarify, you're going to be getting bids on
Bids on the 3-year project.
financing and the
No.
work done.
We would put this out for bid to contractors, and then, once we understood what that was, then we would go out to bid for a loan
Who's got the best
to
rate?
cover that. Yeah.
And then we can tell what's going to happen with the tax rate that we're
Yep,
dealing with.
yep.
For the,
Well, all of that is it's necessary to have this information in order to do that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mean to vote, so?
I got a motion, a second, to just put it out to bid. This
put
is
it-
going to come to the council
Yep.
anyway. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?